We know what you're looking for.
Your specially grilled newspaper, spiced with lifestyle, sport, entertainment, politics, business, and international news. The Voice is available every Friday. Subscribe now. The Voice. Let's find out!
Biggest, baddest debate show in Botswana and all over the world, where we can exchange ideas without exchanging blows, because that's what debate is about, learning to agree to disagree.
Indeed.
And I am your host, Khosi, Chief Murumung, as they call me in the streets, and I'm with Mr. Fangz. So here on this show, we like to bring pressing issues forward and, just get into depth with them and really look at them from both sides, because that's what debate is about, right? We learn to agree to disagree, like I said. Like on this topic we have today, we are disagreeing very strongly about this topic we have today, and about whether or not we should open up the entertainment industry, due to this COVID situation. The entertainment industry has been shut for over a year now, and that's what we're here talking about today. I feel very strongly that it should remain closed. Mr. Fangz here, as an artist, obviously, is going to be speaking for his industry and believes that the industry should be open.
Indeed.
And today, we actually have a very special guest on the line joining us from the United States of America. His name is Sylvanus Teboh, who is an epidemiologist. So he'll give us a nice medical perspective as well as the perspective of what's happening out there in the USA. But as usual, we like to get your comments and views. And as always, you came through, man. You came through with some great comments. Mr. Fangz, how about you share with us some of the comments that the people have been talking about?
Comment is from Teblav Mac. Teblav Mac says, not after I tasted COVID. Satan yo butloko and Ghana experience. No ways, let us be safe than sorry. COVID, yeah, I won't say that, please. Boboko jame boa fufula no jana. Mahatabula atwala. Sevedia kuwa. Hoja is for strength. Kore hao twarike tlala.
Yeah, so he's pretty clear. I think he's passed through the jaws of COVID. And I think anybody who hit the COVID is very clear that this thing it needs to be wiped out.
Indeed. I'll read another comment there from Latifa Pizzi. And comment, my concern is churches.
Entertainment that believe that since the churches are open, since the shops are open, since the schools are open, buses are open, why cannot a few nightclubs be open? And I'll tell you why not.
The restaurants and bars and so on. I suppose I'll read one more comment from Bij Liponama, BW. Rona di business tarona divaile tseneng re bona madi ka tsone ba ji ba khori bone ba bua again bulankwa. Right, so you can hear that comment, right?
Yeah, look, we cannot deny the fact that there's been a significant loss of income for those in the entertainment sector, business owners and everything. But I don't think they are particularly unique. I think every industry has been affected. But maybe, Mr. Fangz, just tell us what your perspective is and why artists like yourself should be allowed back out onto the streets with the masses.
Okay, so, I mean, the first thing is that we are in the middle of a pandemic. Well, and we are still in the eye of the storm. We're not near the end. We're right in the middle of it, Only, I think, 10% of our population has even received a first dose. So the vaccine, and the disease hasn't gotten any less dangerous. If anything, has gotten more dangerous. There are more strains.
Yeah.
Indian strain, South African strain, British strain, and so on. So it's a real situation. I'm not trying to advocate that we must take this pandemic lightly. But the reality is we've been dealing with it for over a year now. And we have been trying to figure out what does the post-COVID or the in-COVID Botswana look like, right? What we have figured out over the past year is it doesn't look like restaurants being closed. It doesn't look like shops and so on being closed. It doesn't look like people being locked inside their homes. It doesn't look like you not being able to have a beer if you want to, right? We figured that much out. So the question in today's debate is, does it look like us not being able to accommodate artists? Because the entertainment industry essentially is built by artists. And what the message has been to artists so far for the past year is, as long as COVID is around, there is no room for you, right? And that's a very painful message to send to people, you know? And we have to look at the way that we even from a governance point of view, we have to look at the way that we deal with different demographics within our society, right? So what we know is we've got a society that has already gotten COVID fatigue, and it's not just a Botswana phenomenon. Around the world, people have gotten tired of the continuous restrictions, and it's becoming harder and harder to get people to adhere to those same restrictions. So there's two options that you got. You can either decide that people are indisciplined and they can't ever follow instructions, or you could think rationally that, well, people don't want to die. It's not that the reason why it's becoming harder to enforce these restrictions isn't because they don't want to comply. They were complying initially. It just becomes harder and harder to live without your freedoms. So the way that you need to approach this is to try and see in what way can we try and accommodate as wide a variety of everybody. Try and build a society that accommodates every single person within society while trusting and respecting people to be able to, and guiding them to be able to adhere to whatever regulations we need. So that means, for example, not preventing restaurants from serving alcohol. Understanding that if you do that, you're just encouraging them to serve alcohol under the table. So what you do is you allow them to serve alcohol, but with restrictions, not after 6 o'clock, right? So these are the sorts of accommodations that we have made with regard to every industry, essentially, because we recognize that if people aren't able to make money, they will starve, right? They will get sick, they will commit crimes, they will get into depression, they will commit suicides. There's so many other problems that come from people not being able to make an income. So now, why specifically artists? Well, the reality is, if we can all think about how we survived those first 6 weeks of lockdown where you couldn't leave your house, we were all listening to music, Chief. We were all watching movies, right? Because artists essentially are an integral part of any developed society, right? We are trying to move away from being dependent on diamonds. We aren't ever going to export labor like China or India. We are going to be exporting services. That means things like banking, that means things like arts, right? Nollywood, Bollywood, Hollywood, they're multi-billion-dollar industries. Why? Because the arts there are thriving. Those industries are thriving and they're allowed to thrive. Not just that, their governments actively support it, right? As opposed to not creating any space at all for artists. So, like I said, this is a debate about what does the post-COVID world look like? What does COVID Botswana look like? Is it a Botswana that has no room for artists, or is it a Botswana that does? And I believe that we have room for everyone, including artists.
Fangz, you're an artist, so I understand. I understand why you're so passionate about this. That your industry has suffered. You haven't been able to release some of your tracks. I get it, but Fangz, I think also we need to realize that our society, it's greater than just the artist, and I mean this with the greatest of respect to all our artists out there, but we need to think about the greater good, right? And this is where I'm going to come into today's debate with. But before I tell you my couple of arguments, I just want to make a few rebuttals, right? About exactly what you said. You pointed out the fact that already with the the restrictions on the restaurants, the fact that they can't sell alcohol at certain times. You already conceded, Hore, Mimolawo ba rob. You know, some restaurants are selling alcohol under the table, right? But now what this shows you is that there's an inability to follow correct protocols when it comes to certain industries, right? I'm not going to get into the why, but this is a clear thing that it comes to this particular industry, that it becomes difficult to control people, right? And obviously for all sorts of reasons, you know, that they want to now just push their profit, and they're not thinking about the implications of what actually happens once those people are intoxicated, right? But let me just move on to that. I'll explain that more a bit further. Look, the first thing is, the reason why we can't open up the entertainment industry is because we need our health system to only be able to, should only be prioritizing COVID-related people, right? Now, what comes with entertainment, nightlife? We all know what comes with it, Fangz. You know, people get into all sorts of fights. The emergency rooms are actually have actually shown a huge decrease in the number of trauma cases that come in, due to a reduction in the movement of people at night. A lot of the trauma cases that come in are people that have had bar fights, car accidents. That's a huge thing, Mobutswana, right? After nightlife, there's all sorts of car accidents and things. So already our health system, it's crippled, right? Now, when you overburden an already crippled health system, what ends up happening? We can't now prioritize the patients that need COVID, because here's Fangz, he just came in with a knife in the head after having a bar fight with some guy, go White City. So we need to make sure that we are prioritizing the health system to deal with our most important and critical patients, which are our COVID patients, right? And you can't deny that the entertainment industry, it's synonymous with these sorts of things. But look, most importantly, it's a minor issue. The major issue here is that once people have started to consume alcohol, right? Once they're in these environments where people are having fun, there's relaxed attitude towards COVID protocols. And we've seen this happening. We've all seen the videos of the clubs in South Africa. You know, there's some cab cutting Shebeen called Gwaha Joe, you know. We've all seen how packed, you've seen it, Fangz. That guy eats Shebeen. We've seen how packed it gets. You know, there's no masks, you know. And because once people are inebriated, go hasin batubasimutse banole di drink senyana. Khona tata khoro o khona go ba controller, because I'm not even going to say they're thinking irrationally, because I don't want to disrespect alcohol drinkers, but their level of care about certain protocols, it goes down, because now their mind state, it's not thinking about all of these health things, right? So I think that's the most important thing, why we need to keep the entertainment industry shut for the time being. Now, look, as a solution, Fangz, because, you know, you've been crying this thing, Yahore, there's no room for artists post-COVID. Look, COVID has also shown us that we need to be innovative, right? So there's artists out there in the world that are making money. Steve Javier, you know, people are innovative in terms of the type of services that they're producing, right? I mean, AKA launched an app at the beginning of the lockdown, right? Where you can stream all of his tracks and things like that. You download the app through Vodacom or whatever. So, Kore, I understand what you're saying, that artists are an integral part of society, but I also feel like society, they're not unique from anyone else in society, and society has had to find ways to be innovative so that things can happen, right? So I think artists as well need to find ways. Maybe they need to start streaming pages, and now you as Fangz, you need to stream your tracks and then charge people a premium. So yeah, man, with that being said, I feel like the entertainment industry right now already it's going to burden an already burdened health system, and also just people's attitudes towards COVID protocols once they're in that space. I think it's very dangerous, Mr. Fangz.
I am grossly offended, Chief, by your speech. I won't even respond to you directly. I'm gonna respond from a commenter here called Lala Voka.
Hey, Lala Voka. Wa luta hela lina la thing hela or
Yes,
kimotole.
Lala Voka says the crowds we see in malls, shops, buses, schools, and many more shows that it is not a wise move to, pardon me. Oh, the comment just disappeared.
Yeah,
right?
but
you
we get the gist of it.
You
I
get the point.
gist of it.
The point here, Chief, is that like you said, artists are not unique. They're not different from other people, right? But for some reason, they're being treated differently from every other person in society. Nobody's sitting here saying, "Yeah, order your clothes from Woolworths online, right? Order your food from the restaurant."
go to Fangz?
No, but for real, right? For some reason, right? The one space where artists, nobody buys CDs anymore, Chief. Music is shut down, right? The only way that artists make money is by hosting events where you can come and see them live. When you prevent them from being able to do that, you're saying that they are burdened, like the words you've been using, that we have no space for them, that they basically have no discipline. You know what I mean? And that's absurd. Everyone else has discipline.
Understand it correctly. All those spaces you're talking about, you're dealing with sober minds. My contention is that once you put alcohol and inebriation into the mix, it's a recipe for disaster, Fangz, and I don't think you can argue with that. Let's try and bring in our epidemiologist.
Let's bring him
Teboh.
Oh,
Hi, Teboh.
hello. Can you hear me?
While he's yes, Tebow. Hi, man. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Yeah. What's your take, man? Chime in on this debate.
Right. First of all, to say thank you for having me. It's really been good listening to the exchange between you two on this very important subject, especially to me as an epidemiologist and as a debater too. And I could say, as a debater, I would have a lot to contribute to the discussion on both sides. But again, I want to say COVID-19 has really been a burden on the global economy, the global public health system, but especially to us Africans and the African economy because we comparatively were less prepared to face this than our counterparts in the West. But again, the thing is, at the start of this pandemic, there was a lot that was necessary. The lockdowns, I think, were necessary at the start because, from the public health standpoint, a lot of our experts did not understand what was going on, right? We knew this was a virus coming out. Uh, we have seen it before, but it's likely coming out with new symptoms and new manifestations that we have not known before. So it was important for the global public health system to take a break to recollect ourselves, understand what we're dealing with, so that we can have better public health measures to uh, give out to the population so that we can see how we go ahead. So I think these lockdowns were necessary at the start. And over the past year, I mean, it's sometimes I find it really hard to believe that we've been doing this for more than a year, right? Over the year, we have learned a lot more new information, new science. We have tried things, we have observed, we have seen the results, and I think we are at a point where it's important to start moving forward, right? And all of those experiments have culminated in a lot of other parts of the world trying new things. And right now, we can be able to appreciate what that moving forward, which I think Fangz is talking about, can look like. You know, at the start, since we did not understand a lot, the very little we knew and we still currently know, right, is that young people like Fangz and myself and you, Chief, uh, we have a less likelihood of getting infected with severe disease and dying from COVID 19. So, a lot of those realities have to be factored into our response. And unless we are deviating from the real science and adding politics and personal feelings and everything into it, that is when the kind of chaos that comes out from the whole situation is bound to be. So I personally think that we have understood a lot at this point about how COVID-19 works. We have a better understanding of how it spreads. We have a better understanding of what the burden on the healthcare system could be. And I think a lot of the restrictions that were put in place in line with addressing this pandemic on a global level can now be narrowed down, especially in our African context and in a place like Botswana, where it is more likely than not for the population to face the economic burden of these lockdowns for a long time, over a year now, compared to the West. So our approach really has to be different, incorporating the public health findings that we've had over the past year and a compassionate response to ensuring that people have their livelihoods and not end up dying from poverty while trying to fight a disease where we have a very high likelihood of not dying from.
Yeah, Tebow. Wonderful, wonderful insights, man. Maybe you can share with us what strategies are being employed over there where you are. Just tell us where you are and how the situation is there. Is the entertainment industry open out there?
When the pandemic started, I was out in the Caribbean on a tiny island called Seba, and uh, one of the major reasons I decided to return to the States was because I was already getting tired of the restrictions that were coming out there, even though the virus was not yet there. And so far, that island has had maybe 2 cases of COVID-19. But I felt like the restrictions were a little too much for me to bear. So I would rather come to the US, which was experiencing an exponential increase in cases, and I choose to be here. So as for the entertainment industry, the reality is at the start of the pandemic, the entertainment industry went on a shutdown, like it happened with most other industries, and especially with the entertainment industries, we saw the moving online of most of the major shows, and cinemas were shut down, artists could not perform, and so on and so forth. But again, that brings us to the reality of this difference between the entertainment industry in the US and maybe that in our countries back home, which is a lot of the products of the entertainment industry out here. There are several means by which this could equally reach out to the consumers without them needing to come to in-person performances and projections and all that. I heard the example you gave about Aka releasing an app, and I do think that would have been something that our artists could use to uh, I don't know, get across the restrictions of this pandemic. But again, you realize that in our African context, things are a lot more different than they are out here in the US, right? A lot of people would not have either the financial means or the technological means to be able to consume that. So uh, out, out in the US, the entertainment industry went away from the total lockdown to using the digital tools that they have to reach their consumer base. And as information started coming out and people were adapting and learning to use the new knowledge that science was coming out with, gradually uh, we have gone to right now in person award shows and all that. And it's, I think, a rapid recovery from the losses that were experienced over the lockdown. And I think we can also safely and effectively implement some of these changes, some of these new findings to be able to ensure that our own industries catch up from the losses of the pandemic. We can safely do that. We have the knowledge about how all this works, and we can be able to do it in such a way that our artists don't suffer the burden anymore.
Wow, thank you so much, Tebow, man, for your insights. Those are some wonderful insights from our epidemiologist friend out there in the United States. We really appreciate your input, and thank you so much, man. I'm sure people have learned a lot from what you said.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks, man. Yeah, so Mr. Fangz, you know, to some extent, our guest is agreeing with you, you know, that we now, when this thing started, we didn't really have a lot of knowledge. Now we need to look at it in context of the information we know now and how we can move forward, and also another thing he's talking about is how the infrastructure demands for artists in the States are already set up. So it's easier for an artist in the States to reach his consumer base through digital channels. Maybe us here are still lacking on that level in terms of infrastructure and cost, because now data is also very expensive in this country.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it is really difficult. I mean, that's the thing. What I find most interesting about like our approach, because I always like to think, how do we approach crises, right? And maybe this will be my last comment is just the way we approach. I find it interesting that when we've got crises, our approach to them is never to like look at the strongest parts of society and think, okay, how do we get them to take more of the burden? Right, we always look at like the weakest people, the ones with like the smallest voice, and then let's just take from them because nobody hears them, nobody cares, right? Which is a real shame because like a lot can generate and develop out of our arts industry. Everybody talks about how Botswana, great artists, we got great musicians, great this, great that, but none of them are making money. Even the successful ones are complaining about how they're not making money. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I refuse to buy that. That none of them. I look. There's some artists that are not complaining, right? That are blowing up. They've put their songs on iTunes.
I disagree.
And they're making money.
You know what? That's what I mean. Like even the ones the most successful artists in our country, even they're complaining. And when you talk about, you look at the measure of success that we talk, successful artists in Botswana, it means that person has a house and a car and they can afford to send their child to private school. You know what I mean? They're living an average middle class life, essentially. They're not out here flying to like Hawaii on holiday or anything like that. They're not a part of the richest people in society. You know what I mean? They're just making do. They're living the life that all of us would like to be able to do as a teacher, as an accountant, as a whatever, right? And for some reason, they're really doing well. There's a real problem.
Let's hear what comments people were talking about during the show. We always appreciate if you guys can chime in with your comments while the debate is going on, and we'll read out your comments.
Yes, always. We appreciate these comments. Khonale Jamal Silefo says, "Ga gona mosola wa gore re tsalwe mo matlong gore re ska ra bolawa ke COVID. Abo re tla re bolawa ke tlala le malwetse a tlhaloganya. We are dying of hunger and depression is preying on us daily."
Yeah, that's something else our epidemiologist said, was talking about how, look, now you're forcing people to die from poverty when you're trying to protect them from dying from this disease. So, it's a question. Is there another comment there?
Yes. Right. There's one from Ras Bigi Leroux. Or is it Leroux? The time has come. Let's groove.
Hey,
I know it just in case we missed it the first time.
Yeah, maybe just give us your final thought, Mr. Fangz, before we wrap up this debate.
Yeah, I just think, like I said from the beginning, I don't want it to ever seem like, as artists or those that propose or support the opening of the entertainment industry, that we don't take this pandemic seriously. It is real, and people are dying from it. So we mustn't act as if it's getting any lighter. But because it's not getting any lighter, we need to find ways to accommodate everyone in society. And artists are part of everyone. They're not a luxury. They're fundamental, and they're people too. I shouldn't have to say that.
Yeah, look, thanks for that, Fangz. And I also don't want to come across as if I dislike artists in some ways. You know, I love artists. I listen to Mr. Fangz's work quite a lot.
Word up.
Artists are an integral part of society, but then also, I feel like we mustn't isolate them and separate them from everyone else in society, because there's so many other industries that have been affected. So I think maybe also as artists, they need to put on the table proposals of how they can open up the industry, because maybe the voice that's missing here is the voice of the artist. And now I realize re ka dira yang re le di-artist. Look, the BOMU Awards are coming soon, and it'll be interesting to see how that's going to be held. Yesterday, the Minister of Youth, Sports and Culture was talking about how this year there'll be no live President's Day competitions, right? But instead they're going to do some nationwide online extravaganza. You know, we're yet to find out what that means, but the fact that they're doing something, it's a good sign, you know. Yeah, it's great to be extravagant. So we support that, you know. And artists live a middle class life. Maybe
the successful ones.
Yeah,
Most
the
of us are
successful
poor.
ones. Look, maybe that's a sign of the industry, and that I don't think it's something that COVID can either help, or COVID has it. Maybe it's made it a little bit worse.
A little.
Yeah, a little bit worse. But then, that's your stance in the beginning. So really, what's the difference? But anyway, that's the end of today's debate. You know, myself and Mr. Fangz, we will agree to disagree, because that's what it means to be in a debate culture.
Right.
We can exchange views, and then at the end of the day, walk out, shake hands, and life still goes on. So from myself, Chief,
And Mr. Fangz.
we will see you again next week on The Voice of the People.
We know what you're looking for.
Your specially grilled newspaper, spiced with lifestyle, sport, entertainment, politics, business, and international news. The Voice is available every Friday. Subscribe now. The Voice.